Black woman kicked out by in-laws after husband's funeral. What happened next was shocking. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. The April sky wept over Magnolia Hills Cemetery, as if nature itself mourned Matthew Langston. Danielle stood motionless beside the gleaming mahogany casket, her black silk dress clinging to her slender frame, the crisp southern wind tugging at her veil. She felt the weight of 100 eyes boring into her back, not all sharing in her grief, but all watching, waiting, judging. The pastor's voice drifted through the air, but Danielle barely heard him. She was lost in memories. Matthew's smile the day they met at Columbia Law. The flash of his mother's diamond-crusted fingers, when she'd refused to shake Danielle's hand at their first meeting. The quiet defiance in Matthew's eyes when he'd told his parents he was marrying her regardless of their objections. Warren and Elizabeth Langston stood opposite Danielle across the grave, statuesque in their designer mourning attire. Warren's silver hair caught the light, his face a mask of appropriate grief. Elizabeth's porcelain features remained rigid, her eyes never meeting Danielle's, as if her son's widow were invisible. Now Matthew was gone, a sudden heart attack at 41, and with him her shield against the world he'd brought her into. Mrs. Langston, the family. The phrase hung in the air between them. In 3 years of marriage, Danielle had never fully been the family. She nodded, following him to the line of black limousines. It took Danielle a moment to register that someone was addressing her. It was Mr. Halpern, Matthew's attorney, his kind eyes crinkling at the corners. The family is gathering at the estate. The cars are waiting. The Langston estate sprawled across 30 acres of Charleston's most exclusive coastline, a white-columned antebellum mansion that had been in Warren's family for 5 generations. Danielle had always felt like a visitor there, even when accompanying her husband on holidays. Today was no different, except for the crushing finality of Matthew's absence. "Thank you," Danielle managed, knowing these were the social niceties that Matthew had navigated so effortlessly. The ones she'd studied like a foreign language. Inside, the grand foyer was filled with flower arrangements and hushed conversations that quieted momentarily when she entered. The crystal chandelier cast fractured light across the marble floor, illuminating faces that quickly turned away from her gaze. Danielle. James Porter approached, his wife Vivian trailing behind him. "Such a tragedy. Matthew was a fine man. If there's anything we can do." "Such a shame," Vivian Porter murmured, her gaze drifting to where Elizabeth stood holding court among Charleston's elite. "You must be devastated." Before Danielle could respond, Elizabeth's personal assistant appeared at her elbow. "Mrs. Langston wishes to speak with you." In the study, Danielle followed the woman through the crowd, aware of the whispers trailing in her wake. The study had been Warren's domain. Dark wood, leather-bound books, and the lingering scent of expensive cigars. Warren and Elizabeth waited inside, along with their daughter Catherine and her husband Bradley. The room fell silent. Danielle stood tall, smoothing her dress, a habit when nervous, that Matthew had always found endearing. "Close the door," Warren instructed the assistant. "Danielle?" Warren's voice was measured, controlled. "We wanted to speak with you privately, as a matter of respect. Matthew's passing has been difficult for all of us," Warren continued, "and we need to address certain practical matters." "Dad, is this really the time?" Catherine interjected, looking uncomfortable. Elizabeth made a small sound, something between a scoff and a sigh, but said nothing. "It's precisely the time," Elizabeth spoke finally, her southern accent pulled taut across her words. "Before things become complicated." Danielle felt a chill creep up her spine. "What matters are we discussing?" Warren cleared his throat. "The estate, the company shares, the properties, they're all entailed in the family trust." Matthew understood this arrangement. The words hung in the air like poison. "What my husband means," Elizabeth cut in, her voice sharp as cut crystal, "is that your temporary position in this family has reached its natural conclusion." "Mother!" Catherine gasped. "I don't understand," Danielle said, though a part of her did. "Let me be plain," Elizabeth continued, gaining momentum. "You were a guest in our son's life, an experiment in modern thinking that sadly we indulged longer than we should have. But Matthew is gone now, and there's no reason to continue this charade." Danielle's throat tightened. "Charade?" "Elizabeth," Warren cautioned, "we agreed to handle this with dignity. There is nothing dignified about dragging out an uncomfortable situation, Elizabeth countered. She turned her cold gaze back to Danielle. We expect you'll want to gather your personal belongings and make arrangements elsewhere. Tonight, the room spun slightly. You're asking me to leave? Today? After burying my husband? We're giving you the courtesy of privacy, Elizabeth replied. The alternative would be more public. This is my home, Danielle said, her voice steadier than she felt. Matthew and I lived in the East Wing. My clothes, my books, my life is here. Warren shifted uncomfortably. The East Wing is part of the estate, and the estate belongs to the Langston Family Trust. I am a Langston, Danielle insisted. Elizabeth's laugh was like shattered glass. Oh, my dear, you never were. Not really. Bradley, who had remained silent, stepped forward. Maybe we should all take some time to— Matthew isn't here, Elizabeth replied coldly. And how do you think he would have felt, knowing you're causing his family such distress on the day of his funeral? There's no time needed, Elizabeth interrupted. The paperwork has already been filed. The company board meets tomorrow to transition Matthew's shares back to family control. Matthew would never have allowed this, Danielle said, her hands trembling now. I'll need time to pack, Danielle finally said. The manipulation was so blatant it nearly took Danielle's breath away. She looked at each face in the room. Warren's stern detachment, Elizabeth's thinly veiled contempt, Catherine's conflicted embarrassment, Bradley's awkward discomfort. We've arranged for help, Warren offered, as if this were a kindness. And a car to take you wherever you need to go. As if on cue, the study door opened, and 2 staff members appeared, longtime household employees who couldn't meet Danielle's eyes. Mrs. Michaels will assist you in gathering your essentials, Warren explained. Anything remaining can be shipped to whatever address you provide. How thoughtful, Danielle replied, her voice laden with quiet sarcasm that only Catherine seemed to register, wincing slightly. Danielle stood frozen, the reality of the situation washing over her in waves. Less than 8 hours ago, she had watched her husband's body lowered into the ground. Now she was being exiled from what remained of their life together. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Warren's face. But Elizabeth stepped forward, her diamond earrings catching the light. Is this what Matthew would have wanted? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Matthew always knew his responsibilities to this family. Whatever diversions he allowed himself in life, in death, blood remains thicker than water. She gestured toward the door. You have 3 hours. In the East Wing, the space she and Matthew had made their own, Mrs. Michaels silently began pulling luggage from the closet. Danielle moved to the window, gazing out at the manicured gardens, where, just last summer, she and Matthew had hosted a charity gala. She remembered his hand at the small of her back, his proud smile as he introduced her to colleagues and friends. Danielle walked from the study with her head high, though her heart hammered against her ribs. Mourners in the foyer parted like the Red Sea as she passed, whispers following in her wake. She climbed the grand staircase, each step an effort of will, her mind racing with disbelief, grief, and the first sparks of rage. Danielle turned, finding her voice. So am I, Mrs. Michaels. But not for the reasons they think I should be. I'm so sorry, Mrs. Langston. Mrs. Michaels whispered, eyes downcast. She pulled her phone from her purse and dialed her closest friend, Maya. The silence on the other end spoke volumes before Maya finally responded. Those heartless bastards. Come straight here. The guest house is yours for as long as you need it. I need a place to stay, Danielle said, her voice catching. Tonight, the Langstons have decided I'm no longer welcome in their world. Danny? How are you holding up? Maya's voice was warm. As Danielle began the surreal task of deciding which pieces of her life to pack in the next 3 hours, she spotted the photograph on her nightstand, she and Matthew on their wedding day, his family conspicuously absent. She slipped it into her purse, a reminder of what was real in a world suddenly turned upside down. The grandfather clock in the hallway chimed 4 times as Danielle watched the staff load her hastily packed suitcases into the waiting town car. She took one last look at the place she'd called home, at the life that had been ripped away as suddenly as Matthew himself. Elizabeth appeared on the portico, watching like a sentinel. We'll have Mr. Halpern contact you about any relevant paperwork. Danielle met her gaze steadily. Matthew always said you were stronger than you looked, Elizabeth. I wonder if he knew just how much. For a fleeting moment, something like uncertainty crossed Elizabeth's face, but it vanished as quickly as it had appeared. Goodbye, Danielle, she said with finality, turning back toward the house before Danielle could respond. As the car pulled down the long driveway, Danielle didn't allow herself to look back. The weight of grief pressed against her chest, now compounded by humiliation and injustice. But beneath it all, a steely resolve was forming. Matthew had chosen her for a reason. He had loved her for a reason. And somewhere in the gathering dusk she sensed he was still with her, whispering the words he'd told her when they'd faced obstacles before. They have no idea who they're dealing with, my love. Not a clue. Maya's guest house was lovely. All soft colors and tasteful furniture, but it wasn't home. Danielle sat on the edge of the unfamiliar bed, staring at her phone. 3 days since the funeral, and already her world had contracted to these 4 walls and the constant ping of concerned messages from a handful of friends. You've barely eaten, Maya said, setting down a tray of food. As Charleston's most sought-after interior designer, Maya knew the Langston family well, professionally at least. Those vultures didn't waste any time, did they? Danielle sighed. I tried my credit card today. Froze. They can't do that, Maya protested. Apparently they can. Matthew set up joint accounts, but I just got an email from Charleston National. Someone presented paperwork showing the accounts were actually business-related, not personal. Danielle's voice was hollow. They froze everything pending an investigation. Maya sat beside her. What about your own accounts? The ones from before we married? Danielle managed a bitter laugh. I closed them after the wedding. Matthew insisted we combine everything. She twisted her wedding ring. He said it was about trust. Her phone buzzed a text from Catherine. I'm sorry about all this, I tried talking to them. Too little, too late. The Langston name carries weight in this town, Maya said carefully. You need a lawyer. I need a job first. Danielle ran a hand over her face. I left my position at the university when Matthew and I got serious. He wanted me to help with the company's community foundation. Another buzz from her phone, this time an email notification. Danielle frowned, opening it. What is it? Maya asked, noticing her expression. The Palmetto Club? My membership's been reviewed and terminated. Danielle's hands shook slightly. Elizabeth is on the board there. They're trying to erase you, Maya said quietly. The truth of those words hit Danielle like a physical blow. In the morning paper, Matthew's obituary had mentioned his parents, his sister, even distant cousins, but referred to Danielle only as a recent companion. Online, photos from charity events where she'd appeared alongside Matthew were being quietly removed from social media accounts. The doorbell rang. Maya disappeared and returned moments later with a courier envelope. For you, she said, handing it to Danielle. Inside was a letter on Langston & Co. letterhead, informing her that her position with the Langston Family Foundation had been eliminated, effective immediately. The signature at the bottom belonged to Warren Langston. They're taking everything, Danielle whispered. Maya squeezed her hand. Not everything, not your dignity, but dignity didn't pay bills, or secure a future. That evening, Danielle tried logging into her email account for the foundation. Access denied. Her personal items from her office had been packed into a box and left with the doorman at Maya's building. Her nameplate had been removed, the security badge deactivated. Mrs. Langston? The doorman had said when she collected the box. I thought Matthew Langston's wife was. I am Matthew Langston's wife, Danielle had replied, chin high despite the humiliation burning in her chest. Oh, I'm sorry, he'd stammered. It's just that Mrs. Elizabeth Langston called you his. Well, never mind. Now, a week after the funeral, Danielle sat at Maya's kitchen counter, scanning job listings. Her law degree from Columbia felt like it belonged to another lifetime, another person. You won't believe what I just heard, Maya said, bursting in from her morning appointments. The Langstons are holding a press conference about the company's future. Today, Danielle turned on the television just in time to see Warren Langston approaching a podium, Elizabeth and the board of directors flanking him. Following the tragic loss of my son, Warren said solemnly, the family has decided to honor Matthew's legacy by maintaining the Langston tradition of family leadership. I will be resuming the role of CEO until a suitable succession plan can be implemented. The camera panned to Elizabeth, regal in navy blue, nodding appropriately, as if they'd been waiting respectfully, not scheming the very day of the funeral. What about Danielle Langston? A reporter called out. Matthew's widow, will she have any role? Elizabeth leaned into the microphone. Matthew's brief marriage was a personal matter, not a business one. The Langston company has always been family-led. The implication was clear: Danielle was not family, never had been. Maya switched off the TV. I can't watch this. I have to, Danielle said quietly. I need to see exactly what I'm up against. Her phone rang, an unknown number. She answered cautiously. Mrs. Langston? This is Trevor Halpern, Matthew's attorney, the man who'd stood beside her at the funeral before everything fell apart. Mr. Halpern, she acknowledged, her voice neutral. I wonder if we might meet, he said, his tone unreadable. There's a matter regarding Matthew's estate that requires your attention, something private. Danielle's heart skipped. When? As soon as possible. My office. Tomorrow morning? After disconnecting, Danielle stared at the phone. For the first time since the funeral, a flutter of something other than despair stirred in her chest. What is it? Maya asked. I'm not sure, Danielle replied slowly. But Matthew always said his father taught him to plan for every contingency. She looked up at the television, now showing Warren and Elizabeth shaking hands with board members, their faces composed masks of appropriate grief and corporate continuity. I wonder, Danielle murmured, if Matthew might have done some planning of his own. Trevor Halpern's office was nothing like the opulent Langston corporate headquarters. Nestled in a converted Victorian home on a quiet Charleston street, it exuded understated competence rather than flashy power. Danielle arrived 10 minutes early, dressed in one of the few professional outfits she'd managed to pack during her hasty exit. The receptionist, an elderly woman with kind eyes, immediately ushered her into Halpern's private office. Mrs. Langston, Halpern rose, extending his hand. Thank you for coming on such short notice. Your call was intriguing, Danielle replied, taking the offered seat. Halpern settled behind his desk, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses. I've been Matthew's personal attorney for 15 years. Not the corporate counsel, that's Blanchard and Associates, but his private legal advisor. I know, Matthew trusted you. Yes, Halpern pulled a manila folder from his desk drawer. Which is why what I'm about to share with you never went through the Langston Company channels. He slid the folder across the desk. 3 months ago, Matthew came to see me, privately. He wanted to make changes to his will. Changes he specified were to remain confidential until after his death. Danielle's heart thumped painfully against her ribs. Changes? Mrs. Langston, Danielle, I'm aware of what happened after the funeral. Matthew anticipated something like this might occur. Halpern tapped the folder. He prepared accordingly. With trembling fingers, Danielle opened the folder. Inside was a legal document, Matthew's revised will, notarized and filed with the court. This isn't the will Warren and Elizabeth have been working from, she realized. No. That version dates from before your marriage. Matthew led his parents to believe it was still valid. Danielle scanned the document, key phrases leaping from the page. Sole beneficiary of my personal estate, controlling interest in Langston & Co. to be transferred in full, all real estate holdings. She looked up, disbelieving. Everything? He left me everything. Halpern nodded. The family estate, his personal accounts, investment portfolios, and most significantly, his 51% controlling interest in Langston & Co. Why didn't you come forward with this at the funeral? Before they? Her voice caught. Matthew's instructions were explicit. Halpern removed an envelope from the folder, sealed with wax impressed with Matthew's signet ring. He asked that I wait 1 week after his funeral before delivering this to you, along with the will. The envelope bore her name in Matthew's distinctive handwriting. Danielle broke the seal with care, pulled out a single sheet of stationery, and recognized her husband's hand immediately. My dearest Danielle, if you're reading this, then the worst has happened, and I've left you alone to face my family. I'm so sorry, my love, not just for leaving you, but for what I know they'll attempt to do. I've watched my parents' true nature my entire life, the polite faces they show the world, and the ruthless control they maintain behind closed doors. When I fell in love with you, Their reaction confirmed what I'd always suspected: their values were never truly mine. My father always taught me to prepare for every contingency. Ironically, that's exactly what I've done. What you hold in your hands is your shield against them, and your sword if you choose to wield it. The company, the estate, the Langston legacy, it's all yours now. Not because I didn't love my family, but because I loved you more, and because I believe you'll use these resources in ways they never would. Don't let them intimidate you. Don't let them erase you. You were never just my wife. You were my partner, my conscience and my compass. Remember what you told me when we met? Power isn't about who has the most strength. It's about who refuses to be afraid. Show them what that means, Danielle. Forever yours, Matthew. Tears blurred her vision. She could almost hear his voice, feel his presence in the words. Are you all right? Halpern asked gently. Danielle carefully folded the letter. When can we file this will? It's already filed. Legal notification has been sent to Warren and Elizabeth Langston, as well as to Langston & Co.'s board of directors. Halpern checked his watch. They should be receiving it approximately now. As if on cue, Danielle's phone buzzed with a text from Maya. Something's happening. Warren Langston just stormed out of a board meeting, looking like he's seen a ghost. Halpern leaned forward. Matthew also left instructions regarding next steps. There's a board meeting tomorrow at 10 a.m. As majority shareholder, you have the right to attend. In fact, you have the right to chair it. I haven't stepped foot in that building since before the funeral, Danielle said quietly. Perhaps it's time you did. Halpern slid another document across the desk, a detailed breakdown of Langston & Co.'s corporate structure, board members, and key executives. Matthew prepared this for you as well. He called it your battlefield map. Danielle's phone rang, Warren Langston's name flashing on the screen. She silenced it without answering. They'll try to fight this, she said. They certainly will. Halpern nodded. Matthew expected that too, which is why he had me prepare these. He opened a drawer and removed a thick stack of folders. Every possible legal challenge they might mount, and the counter-strategy for each. For the first time since the funeral, Danielle felt a smile forming, small but genuine. Mr. Halpern, she said, gathering the documents. I believe we have work to do. As she left the office, her phone buzzed again. Elizabeth Langston this time. Let them call. Let them panic. Let them wonder what was coming next. Matthew had left her more than his wealth. He'd left her the means to reclaim her dignity, and perhaps to reshape his family's legacy into something worthy of the man she'd loved. The morning sun glinted off the Langston & Co. building. 60 stories of glass and steel dominating the Charleston skyline. Danielle stepped from the car, no longer in widow's black but in a tailored white pantsuit that Maya had rushed to her the night before. Ready? Halpern asked, briefcase in hand. As I'll ever be. Danielle squared her shoulders and walked through the revolving doors she'd last exited as Matthew's wife, returning now as Matthew's heir. The security guard at the desk did a double take. Mrs. Langston, we weren't expecting. I believe the board is meeting on the executive floor, she said calmly, extending her hand for a visitor's badge. Ma'am, I need to call up first. Halpern stepped forward, placing a document on the desk. That won't be necessary. Mrs. Langston is the majority shareholder as of yesterday. This is the court order confirming her status. The guard's eyes widened. He made a call, his voice hushed and urgent, before reluctantly printing a badge. Executive access, he mumbled, sliding it across the counter. In the elevator, Danielle caught her reflection in the polished doors, composed on the surface, though her heart hammered beneath her crisp white blazer. The folder in her hand contained Matthew's letter, her talisman against what was to come. The executive floor was chaos. Assistants whispered urgently into phones, junior executives huddled in corners, and through the glass walls of the boardroom, Danielle could see Warren Langston gesturing angrily while Elizabeth sat rigidly beside him. Marjorie, Matthew's longtime executive assistant, spotted her first. Her face transformed from shock to something like relief. Mrs. Langston, she said, crossing the room swiftly. Thank God you're here. Hello, Marjorie. Danielle noted the dark circles under the woman's eyes. Difficult morning? Mr. Warren has been challenging since the notification arrived. Marjorie glanced nervously at the boardroom. The entire board is in there. With lawyers. Then we shouldn't keep them waiting. Marjorie opened the boardroom door and the heated conversation inside died instantly. 12 faces turned toward Danielle, most shocked, some calculating, a few openly hostile. Warren recovered first. This is a private meeting. Not anymore. Danielle entered, Halpern at her side. Since you're discussing the future of Langston & Co., the majority shareholders should be present. Elizabeth's face was bloodless with fury. That will is a fraud. Matthew would never. It's been authenticated by the court, Elizabeth, Halpern interrupted. The signature, the witnesses, the filing dates, all verified. Danielle took the empty chair at the head of the table, Matthew's chair, and placed her folder before her. The room fell silent at the audacity. Ladies and gentlemen, she began, I understand this transition is unexpected. But Matthew's wishes were clear. Langston & Co. is now under my control as majority shareholder. Bradford Mills, the CFO who'd always been cordial to her, cleared his throat. Mrs. Langston, with all due respect, running a billion-dollar company requires experience that you all possess, Danielle finished for him. Which is why Matthew left detailed instructions about the leadership structure moving forward. She removed a document from her folder. Some of you will remain in your positions, others will be asked to step down, effective immediately. Warren slammed his fist on the table. This is absurd, the board won't stand for it. The board? Danielle replied evenly, serves at the pleasure of the majority shareholder. That's corporate law, Warren. I believe it was you who insisted Matthew learn it by heart before he turned 18. Elizabeth leaned forward, voice dripping with venom. You may have fooled my son with whatever spell you cast, but this company has been in our family for generations. You think these people will follow you? A woman who appeared out of nowhere 3 years ago. Danielle opened her laptop. Let's find out, shall we? She turned the screen to face the board, displaying a spreadsheet. This shows the performance reviews Matthew kept on each executive. Notes on your decision-making, ethical standards, treatment of employees, and loyalty to his vision. She scrolled slowly, letting them glimpse their names. Some of you earned his respect, others. Her eyes flicked meaningfully to Warren. Bradford Mills studied her with new interest. You've been preparing for this. Matthew was preparing me for this, Danielle corrected. He suspected his parents might try to seize control if anything happened to him. This is outrageous, Elizabeth hissed. You can't possibly understand our business, our connections, our world. Your world? Danielle raised an eyebrow. The same world that you said I was merely a guest in? The one you evicted me from hours after burying my husband? The board members exchanged uncomfortable glances. This was clearly news to some of them. That was a family matter, Warren muttered. Indeed it was. And now this is a business matter. Danielle turned to a young woman at the far end of the table. Emily Chen, head of innovation, and one of Matthew's most trusted executives. Ms. Chen, I believe you have a presentation prepared on the diversity initiatives Matthew had planned. Emily nodded, surprised but quickly recovering. Yes. I do. Then let's proceed with the actual agenda. Danielle turned to Warren and Elizabeth. You're welcome to stay, of course. As minority shareholders, your input is valued, if not decisive. The implication was clear, they could adapt or leave. Elizabeth stood abruptly. This isn't over, she warned, voice trembling with rage. Actually, Danielle replied softly, it is. Matthew made his choice. I suggest you respect it, as I always respected his choice to remain connected to you, despite everything. Something flickered in Warren's eyes, a flash of regret, quickly suppressed. He took Elizabeth's arm. Come, dear, our lawyers will contact Mrs. Langston's representative. As they left, the tension in the room visibly eased. Danielle nodded to Emily. Please begin your presentation, Miss Chen. The future of Langston & Co. starts today. Later, as executives filed out, Bradford Mills lingered. That was impressive, he admitted. Matthew would have enjoyed watching you put his parents in their place. Danielle smiled sadly. Matthew always said the company could be more than just profitable. It could be purposeful. And you intend to make that happen? With the help of those who shared his vision, she confirmed. Starting tomorrow. As she gathered her things, Danielle noticed Marjorie waiting at the door. Mrs. Langston? There's someone here to see you. Standing in the reception area was Catherine, looking uncertain in a way Danielle had never seen before. I heard what happened, Catherine said quietly. Mom and Dad are furious, but Matthew would be proud. Danielle studied her sister-in-law's face. Thank you for saying that. I should have said more. Before. Catherine hesitated. Maybe it's not too late to try again as family. Danielle considered this olive branch, thin but genuine. Perhaps, she said carefully. One step at a time. The first step had been taken. The widow had returned, not in mourning, but in power. The Charleston Business Chronicle headline said it all. Langston heir passes control to widow. Company shares surge 12%. The accompanying photos showed Danielle exiting Langston headquarters poised and professional. The article detailed the surprise succession plan that Matthew Langston had brilliantly orchestrated before his untimely death. 2 weeks after the boardroom confrontation, Danielle sat in Matthew's former office, now hers, reviewing quarterly projections with Bradford Mills. These numbers exceed even our most optimistic forecasts, Bradford noted. The market loves the new direction, Matthew's direction. Danielle corrected. I'm just implementing what he always wanted. Bradford shook his head. Don't sell yourself short. The diversity initiative announcement alone boosted our public perception metrics by 20 points. That was your addition to his framework. A knock at the door interrupted them. Marjorie entered with a slim folder. Mrs. Langston, the preliminary guest list for the Palmetto Charity Gala next month. Danielle scanned the list, noting several key absences. The Porters aren't attending? Porters specifically requested to be seated at your table, Marjorie clarified. It's the Whitcombs, Aldersons and Beaumonts who declined. Elizabeth's closest friends, Danielle realized. Yes, ma'am. Though Mrs. Fitzroy, who usually aligns with Mrs. Elizabeth's social circle, has requested to host you at her annual luncheon next week. Bradford looked amused. The social realignment begins. Charleston's elite are nothing if not pragmatic about power. Speaking of Elizabeth, Marjorie said carefully, she's been calling the main office daily, asking about board minutes and executive decisions. She seems particularly concerned about the new diversity division. Forward her calls to legal, Danielle replied. Mr. Halpern can address any legitimate shareholder concerns. After Bradford left, Danielle walked to the window. From 60 floors up, Charleston looked peaceful, its historic district meeting the modern harbor in a blend of old and new, much like the company she now controlled. Her intercom buzzed. Mrs. Langston. Security reports that Mrs. Elizabeth Langston is in the lobby, demanding to see you. Danielle considered this. Send her up. 5 minutes later, Elizabeth Langston swept into the office, looking both imperious and uncomfortable. Gone was her usual social polish, replaced by a brittle defensiveness. Elizabeth, Danielle gestured to a chair. This is unexpected. Is it? Elizabeth remained standing. You've systematically dismantled my family's influence in this company. Did you think I wouldn't notice? I've implemented changes Matthew wanted, Danielle corrected. The family still retains significant ownership, just not control. Elizabeth's gaze darted around the office. Formerly Warren's, then Matthew's, now Danielle's. You've even redecorated. I removed the hunting trophies, Danielle acknowledged. They didn't align with our new environmental commitment. Our commitment, Elizabeth repeated bitterly. You speak as if you built this company. No, your husband's grandfather built it. Warren expanded it, Matthew modernized it. Danielle met Elizabeth's gaze, and I'm ensuring it survives the next century. Elizabeth sank into the chair despite herself. The Beaumonts uninvited us from their summer house. 30 years of friendship ended because Cornelia heard you're supplying scholarships to her husband's competition. Mr. Beaumont's shipping company has operated with questionable labor practices for decades, Danielle replied. Our foundation now supports ethical businesses that compete with partners who don't meet our standards. Elizabeth's laugh was hollow. You've made yourself quite popular with certain circles. The diversity initiatives, the community investment fund, the new board appointments, all perfectly calculated to build your image while decimating ours. This isn't about image, Elizabeth. It's about values. Values? You've fired 12 executives, all friends of our family. I fired 12 executives who were implicated in discrimination lawsuits or ethical violations. Danielle corrected. Their connections to your family were incidental. Elizabeth leaned forward. Let's stop pretending. This is revenge for how we treated you. No, Danielle's voice was steady. Revenge would be using my position to humiliate you publicly, to evict you from your home, to freeze your accounts. She let the implications hang between them. I haven't done those things. Something like shame flickered across Elizabeth's face. And what about Warren? He built this company into what it is today, which is why I've invited him to chair the Langston Foundation. Danielle replied. His connections can still benefit our philanthropic work if he's willing. Elizabeth looked genuinely surprised. You're offering him a position? I'm offering him purpose, Danielle clarified. Something meaningful to do with his expertise, without control of company operations. And me? Elizabeth asked, her voice smaller than Danielle had ever heard it. Danielle considered the woman before her, proud, prejudiced, but suddenly vulnerable. That depends on you, Elizabeth. Matthew loved his family despite everything. He wouldn't want warfare between us. But you fired the caterers from my spring luncheon, Elizabeth said, bewilderment in her voice. 30 years with the same service, and suddenly they're unavailable. Danielle hadn't known about this particular consequence of the company's new policies. If our vendors are declining your business, that's their choice, not my directive. Elizabeth stood, smoothing her skirt with trembling hands. This isn't over. It could be, Danielle replied softly. Matthew would have wanted reconciliation, not perpetual conflict. Matthew wanted many things he couldn't have, Elizabeth said, but the venom had drained from her voice, leaving only tired resignation. As Elizabeth reached the door, Danielle called after her. I've maintained your family's name on the building, Elizabeth. I could have changed it. Elizabeth paused, her back stiff. Why didn't you? Because despite everything, Matthew was proud to be a Langston, and now, so am I. The door closed behind Elizabeth, leaving Danielle alone with the weight of her new role, and the ghost of the man who had entrusted her with his legacy. On her desk sat the photograph from their wedding day, now joined by a framed copy of the company's new mission statement, the one Matthew had drafted but never implemented. The tables had turned, but Danielle understood that true power wasn't about revenge, it was about reform. 6 months after Matthew's funeral, Danielle stood at the window of her office, watching Charleston prepare for dusk. The harbor lights were beginning to twinkle, mirroring the stars that would soon appear above the Atlantic. Behind her, on the credenza sat framed magazine covers from Forbes, Business Weekly, and Southern Enterprise, all featuring her image and headlines about Langston & Co.'s remarkable transformation. The numbers for the third quarter, Mrs. Langston, said Bradford Mills, placing a folder on her desk. Our best in 5 years, Danielle smiled. Matthew would be pleased. The board certainly is. The diversity division has attracted more top talent than we anticipated. Emily Chen's team has filed 16 patents this quarter alone. After Bradford left, Danielle settled into the leather chair, no longer Matthew's chair in her mind, but truly hers now. The office had evolved, just as she had. The dark mahogany and hunting prints had given way to warm wood and local art. A wall of photographs chronicled community initiatives, scholarship recipients and ribbon cuttings for the new Langston Innovation Centers in underserved neighborhoods. Her intercom buzzed. Mrs. Langston, your sister-in-law is here to see you. Catherine entered carrying a small package. Their relationship had warmed considerably over the months, with Catherine serving as an unexpected bridge between the past and future of the Langston legacy. The invitations for the foundation gala arrived, Catherine said, opening the package. The embossed card read, the Matthew Langston Foundation for Educational Equity. First annual benefit. They're perfect, Danielle said. Has your mother responded to her invitation yet? Catherine shook her head. Not officially, but Dad has agreed to attend. He's actually taking his foundation role seriously. Says it's the most meaningful work he's done in years. And Elizabeth, she's adjusting. Catherine chose her words carefully. Last week at the garden club, 3 different women asked her about the foundation's scholarship program. I think she's realizing it might be better to be associated with the new Langston legacy than opposed to it. Danielle nodded, unsurprised. Elizabeth was nothing if not socially strategic. After Catherine left, Danielle's phone chimed with a text from Maya. Look what arrived today, Attached was a photo of an envelope with the Langston family crest. Danielle smiled. Even Elizabeth was practical enough to recognize that Maya's design firm was still the best in Charleston, regardless of personal feelings. The intercom buzzed again. "Mrs. Langston. Mr. Halpern is here with the papers for the trust." Trevor Halpern entered, looking pleased. "The Matthew Langston Educational Trust is officially established. The endowment is funded, the board appointed, and the first scholarships will be awarded next fall." "Thank you, Trevor." Danielle signed the final documents. This was the most important part of his vision. "He would be proud," Halpern said, echoing what so many had told her over these months. "Not just of what you've built, but of how you've built it." After Halpern departed, Danielle gathered her things for the evening. As she prepared to leave, her assistant handed her a cream-colored envelope. This was delivered by messenger. Marked personal. Alone in the elevator, Danielle opened it. Inside was a handwritten note on Elizabeth Langston's personalized stationery. "Danielle, Warren has informed me he intends to attend your foundation gala. After considerable thought, I have decided to accompany him. I make no pretense that this represents reconciliation. Some wounds are too deep for that. However, Matthew's name deserves to be honored, and I acknowledge that you have stewarded his vision with more care than I anticipated. The company thrives. The Langston name remains respected, if changed. Perhaps that is what matters most in the end." Elizabeth. It wasn't an apology, Elizabeth was incapable of that, but it was surrender, in its way. And perhaps, that was enough. The car waited at the curb to take Danielle home, not to Maya's guest house, but to the Langston estate that was now legally hers. She had hesitated to move back, concerned about reopening wounds, but Catherine had been surprisingly insistent. "It's your home, Matthew wanted you there." In the East Wing she'd preserved their shared spaces largely as they had been. But she'd transformed Matthew's study into the headquarters for her personal project, a scholarship program for young lawyers from underrepresented communities. At home, Danielle changed into comfortable clothes and carried a glass of wine to the terrace overlooking the garden. In the distance, Charleston Harbor glittered. Somewhere out there was the future Matthew had imagined for the company, for his family name, for the community he'd loved despite its flaws. Her phone rang, Maya calling to confirm lunch plans. "How does it feel?" Maya asked. "6 months ago they kicked you to the curb, and now Elizabeth Langston is basically genuflecting to get an invitation to your gala." Danielle laughed. "I wouldn't go that far, but yes, things have changed." "You've changed them," Maya corrected. "When are you going to admit that this isn't just Matthew's legacy anymore? It's yours too." After they hung up, Danielle considered Maya's words. On her desk inside lay the framework for Langston & Co.'s 5-year plan, her vision now, built on Matthew's foundation, but extending far beyond what even he might have imagined. The company would remain Langston & Co., the name was part of Charleston's history, but its future was being written by her hand, shaped by her values, guided by her determination that the power Matthew left her would create opportunities rather than barriers. The headlines had called her story shocking, sensational, the widow cast out who returned in triumph. But sitting here in the quiet evening, Danielle knew the true story was more profound. It wasn't about revenge or even vindication. It was about transformation of a company, of a legacy, and of herself. From beloved wife to grieving widow to powerful CEO. From outsider to the very heart of the institution that had once rejected her. Matthew had given her the tools, but she had built something new with them, something entirely her own.